Hello, and good evening, and hola, and buenas tardes, or buenas noches. This is Julia Alvarez.
And Bill.
Good friends of Eddie. And we are here to congratulate Eddie and Scherezade for this neat little book, Refranes de mi Abuelita.
Or Sayings of My Grandmother.
Sayings of My Grandmother. Beautiful book. Full of wisdom and gorgeous, gorgeous illustrations.
And humor.
And humor. And this is the wisdom of our viejitos in the DR. And we have this in book form now. It's usually oral literature, but we have this treat of this book. And we know Eddie from Order of Lights. We don't know Scherezade yet. Looking forward to someday meeting her. And I want to congratulate you both. And one last word. There's a refrán here that I think needs some revision. It says, no hagas castillos en el aire.
Don't build castles in the sky.
But knowing Eddie now for over a decade, he is a guy that builds castles in the sky, as he did with Border of Lights, and as he did with this fabulous little book, and he gets them built, and we can all move in and daydream along with him. So congratulations from us both.
All the best.
Siempre hay un lector.
Can't call nobody. Not even a little bit.
Hey everyone, good evening. Welcome to the space. My name is Michelle. I'm one of the volunteers here. Who's first time ever here at Recirculation? All right, a good bunch of you. So Recirculation is a project of Word Up Books, which is just across the way. We started, I guess, probably 3 years ago now, about. One of our longtime Word Up volunteers unfortunately passed away from COVID, and one of his last wishes was to get his books out into the world, and his email was Recirculation, because he believed in getting the books recirculated so much. So this space started as a pop-up where we were trying to get his books and records and music into the world. So all these wine crates you see were like floor to ceiling in his apartment. And so the space is you know, shout out to Tom, which is why we have this space. We now have a lease, and we can hold events here. We have a gallery wall with some beautiful art from the book, which we're really excited to have. So we welcome you. If anyone's excited enough about the space, wants to volunteer, talk to us afterwards. We do run mostly on volunteer power. So thanks everyone for coming out. We'll pass it off to the host.
Thank you so much. Gracias a todos por estar aquí hoy. Wow. Qué linda audiencia. And I must say, I was a little skeptical porque ustedes no le gustan registrarse para nada. And I was like, oh my God, we only have like 10 people coming. But anyways, mi nombre es Ángela Abreu. Yo soy la fundadora de la organización sin fines de lucro Dominican Writers Association. Nuestra asociación se dedica a amplificar nuestras historias dominicanas y poner un libro dominicano en cada hogar. Ese es mi enfoque, ya que yo soy dominicana-americana y a mí nadie compartió conmigo el libro dominicano. Lo tuve que buscar yo. Entonces nosotros estamos cambiando eso para que ya nuestros hijos tengan un libro en sus manos lo más temprano posible, un libro dominicano que se le introduzca a nuestras historias, tradiciones y cultura lo más temprano. Si quieren saber un poquito más sobre el trabajo que hacemos, pueden visitar dominicanwriters.com. También estamos igualito en Instagram y Facebook. ¿Ok? Hoy estamos aquí porque estamos lanzando el libro Refranes de mi abuelito, escrito por el profesor Edward Paulino y la artista Scherezade García. ¿Ok? Yo tengo, I have your bio in English, pero voy a tratar de traducirlo en español lo más como yo puedo. Edward es un profesor asociado en el Departamento de Historia Global en CUNY John Jay, donde yo me gradué. Okay. Y él enseña una variedad de clases de humanidades, incluyendo la historia del genocidio. Él es autor del libro publicado en el 2016, Dividiendo Hispaniola. También es co-editor de Border of Lights Reader y cofundador de Border of Lights Collective desde el 2012. Él ha escrito y ha actuado en su propia obra de teatro, de One Man Show, Eris Perejil, que expuso en el 2018, y también ha escrito unos cuantos otros, how you say script in Spanish, se me fue la guagua en eso. Guiones. Ok. Y recientemente, Eri hace muchas cosas. A veces me vuelve loca porque tiene muchas cosas en ese cerebro de él. ¿Okay? Yo recibo muchas llamadas y muchos textos. Tengo esta idea. Quiero hacer esto. Vamos a hablar. Hago tu consulta. ¿Qué tú quieres? Pero ese es el resumen de tu bio, Eri. Y Scherezade, para ustedes que no la conocen, aquí alrededor de ustedes van a ver su arte allí. Por favor, tomen un momento de ir y apreciar su arte, porque es una arte única que no la van a ver en ningún otro lado, al menos que sea un museo, una galería. Y Scherezade es una pintora. ¿Cómo se dice printmaker en español, Scherezade? Impresora e instaladora de arte. Cuyo arte explora alegorías de historia, de migración y de memoria ancestral colectiva, al igual que la colonización cultural y política. Ella es la cofundadora del Dominican York Proyecto Gráfica y se graduó de Chabón, y al igual que de Parsons School of Design aquí en Nueva York, y también fue a City College. All right, CUNY graduate here, okay. García ha tenido unos cuantos solo shows, varios solo, porque cada vez que yo me volteo, tú estás viajando, tú estás haciendo un show aquí. Hoy anunció un libro. Ella está busy. Tan busy, señores, que este libro salió en octubre y hoy es que lo estamos lanzando. Nada más no fue COVID. Fue cada rato, Scherezade, ay, estoy en Santo Domingo, ay, estoy aquí, ay, estoy allí. Digo yo, ok, ustedes se acotejan y me dan 3 fechas. Yo nada más decía 3 fechas, señores, porque como ustedes no se pueden, me dan 3 fechas, vamos a ver cuál de estas se puede.
Pero fueron varias veces las 3 fechas.
Sí, varias veces. Yo, ok, estos son los primeros autores que duran tanto tiempo para lanzar un libro, porque de una vez, yes, ya, vamos a hacerlo, mañana. But, aquí estamos. Y sin decir más, ¿verdad? Vamos a entrar al grano. ¿A qué vinimos aquí? ¿Verdad? Porque yo quiero que ustedes le cuenten a todas las personas que vinieron aquí, tú en especial, Eri, ¿qué fue lo que te inspiró a recopilar y a compartir estos refranes de tu abuelita y cómo lo elegiste para el libro?
Bueno,
El micrófono.
¿En inglés o español o...?
Yo creo que en español, ¿verdad? Is there anyone here who doesn't speak Spanish?
Or understand.
I did this whole thing. But I said, you can go ahead and we'll translate. I'll translate.
Ok. Bueno, como yo escribí en el libro, bueno, muchísimas gracias por venir todos aquí. Estoy muy feliz y orgulloso de que ustedes sacaron tiempo de su agenda atareada para venir aquí. Orgulloso de compartir y colaborar con Scherezade y orgulloso de ti, Angie, por levantar esta ONG tremenda, la Dominican Israel Association. Mi abuelita muere en el 2006 y muy triste. Yo, como historiador, quería saber cómo podía preservar esa memoria. Y siempre hablaba con ella, todavía tengo videos de ella. Ella se murió de 103 años en el 2006. Y comencé a recopilar refranes que mi mamá me contaba, que mi mamá está aquí, es la única que está viva de las dos tías, de Josefina y Mercedes Díaz. Y comencé a escribir después del 2006. Y ya después de un tiempo iba para 50 refranes, 100 refranes, 150 refranes. Y ahí que comenzó el proyecto para yo decir, puede quizás ser un libro.
So va a haber una parte 2 y 3. Porque ahí no hay 100 refranes en ese libro.
No, esa es la meta.
Esa es la meta. Okay, to translate, Eddie has shared that his grandmother passed away in 2006. She was 103 years old. And he would think, how could he preserve her history and these proverbs that she would share, and that his mom would share, and that his aunts would share. And through video conversations that he still has of her, he started writing them down. And, you know, he had 50, then 100, now a little bit more. And that's how this book came together, because it was a way for him to preserve that part of the women of his family. His mom is here, by the way. Thank you, Eddie. Y para Scherezade, tus ilustraciones, tu arte, le dan una vida visual única a los refranes. ¿Tú puedes describir tu proceso creativo para traducir estos dichos al arte?
Sí, claro que sí. Bueno, todo comienza, como todo, que yo no puedo decir que no a ningún proyecto que me encanta. Y por eso es que pasa que yo digo, ¿dónde es que tú estás? Yo no sé, yo estoy en Puerto Rico, que estoy no sé qué. Porque realmente hay tantas cosas que me encantan. Y yo creo que la colaboración es key para el crecimiento de todos nosotros. O sea, es como en el caso de... Yo conocí a Eddie de hace 1400 años realmente.
Wow.
Dominican Stories, Dominican 2000. Y en 1999, 98, 99 se empezaron a juntar estos grupos de profesionales, casi todo el mundo de City College, y empezamos a formar este grupo Dominican 2000. Para mí ese fue un momento importantísimo en mi historia y en la historia de todos nosotros. O sea, realmente fue como el glue para mí venir a Washington Heights. O sea, hay que entender que cuando yo vine a Estados Unidos, yo vine a Parsons. O sea, yo vivía en el Village. Entonces, es otro planeta en un sentido, porque es en New York, donde hay muchos dominicanos también, muchos puertorriqueños, muchos cubanos, todo el mundo, es cosmopolita, ¿no? Pero no tiene el carácter que tiene Washington Heights. O sea, yo siempre estaba muy ocupada en ese mundo. Entonces, sí, yo venía, que no, alguien de visita que venía, uno viene, pero no entender lo que estaba pasando, la revolución que estaba pasando en City College. Y eso me inspiró mucho, no solamente a mí, también a mi hermana y a un grupo de nosotros. Entonces, ahí comenzó la relación. Cuando yo me reencuentro con Eddie en Borders of Light, y ahí se vuelve también un grupo de gente que son intergeneracionales. Ahí empezó una amistad y empieza la conversación de Eddie sobre su abuelita. Mi relación con mi abuelita es muy cercana. Mi abuelita era profesora, mis tías abuelas también. Yo siempre fui muy cercana a mi abuelita, y el hecho de los diccionarios, los libros, la literatura dominicana, el orgullo de ser dominicana, era algo muy importante para mí. Y eso definitivamente me ha formado, ¿no? Y entonces esa conversación fue la que comencé con él y nos encontramos en una fiesta de Carolina González, la escritora de Carolina González, y él vino con esa idea y dije, tengo que hacer algo. Y ese algo. Y ahí empezó la colaboración.
That was long-winded, but I will try.
Ya, de ahí viene también por qué pasa estas imágenes tan llenas de joy, de disfrute. Tienen que ser caribeñas, tienen que tener ese pasión, amor que hay de nuestros abuelitos, de gente que han sido súper importantes para nosotros. Es la memoria colectiva que vive en nosotros. La gente no muere, la gente continúa.
De acuerdo. So Scherezade said that when she came here, she lived in the village. She started at Parsons, so which is a totally different world than coming here in Washington Heights. And she met Eddie at the Dominican Studies Institute in the year 2000, because I guess there was like a social club for Dominicans, and that's where many Dominican professionals were meeting each other. It was a conference, and that's where they were, I remember those conferences, the Dominican Studies conferences, and you see Dominicans from all over the world that, writers, artists, professors, politicians, all come together in this one place, and it's grandiose. And then she later met up with Eddie again at a Border of Light ceremony that is hosted by Julia Alvarez and her team, and it's to commemorate the massacre of 1937 Haitian massacre. I'm so sorry, I blanked out on that. The 1937 Haitian massacre. And after that meeting, Eddie grabbed her and did what he does to me and said, I have this idea. Let's work together, let's collaborate. And Scherezade said that when there's an awesome project, it's very difficult for her to say no. And I could relate to that, because that was one reason why I didn't say no to Eddie. Because Eddie had consulted with me about this book, and I said, well, Eddie, I think you should go try the traditional route. Right? And I referred them to a few editors that I knew, and he sat with some of them, and it didn't pan out. Right? Could you tell that story?
Can I say it in English?
Yeah, go ahead.
It sounds English. So I took the idea, and it's like, can we meet? And so you work at the Bronx Veterans the hospital, and she said, come over. So I go in, and it's the first time I go to this hospital, and it's like amazing.
Came to my job.
I went to the job, and I saw so many like black and brown veterans, right? It's amazing, right? I went in, so it's still COVID. We sit down, and I have a mock, very polished book that, Scherezade and Ileana here, who's, and like they're the master kind of book formatters, and another person, Lia Slava, who I turned part of the Alto Chavo Mafia. So I had this amazing polish, and I was like, is it okay? And they're like, yo, leave it up to us. We know about this. So we sit down, and I tell Angie, close your eyes, and I put the book in front of her, right? And this is after being spurned by many mainstream publishers, right? Refranes, negative. We don't want that. It's not gonna make us money.
I did not want to publish it, folks.
Right?
And it wasn't because I didn't love it. It was because I felt that it deserved a bigger press behind it.
Right, but you didn't see the mock. So
right.
When the mock comes, I said, close your eyes. She closed her eyes. We're at the table. She opens her eyes. She puts her hands to her chin. She starts rubbing her chin. She starts, turning over the pages. Her eyes squint. And then she looks up and she says, we'll publish it. This is beautiful. And this is what I wrote down on my cell phone that doesn't have a battery right now. And I said it was so emotional to be validated, but also to be validated by someone like you, whose mission is to document and preserve and champion Dominican writers. And so, in the note that I wrote down, I said, you, and this, you know, my abuelita, mi tía, Scherezade, Eliana, all of you represent this essence that you're all inextricably tied of the refrán that says, busca quien te quiere y no busque a quien querer. Wow. You know? And that for me is this collaboration here. Of course, let's do it. There's no, pero wait, I don't know, this and that. I think no, this is a story. And it's incredibly powerful.
I didn't know you felt that way.
And if you don't know,
now I know. Thank you, Eddie. I appreciate that. Wow. You know, I tell people often that I'm usually on the go all the time, and there's always something else on my to-do list to scratch off. There's always another meeting. There's always another project. There's always another contract I need to send out, whatever. And sometimes it's hard for me to sit down and realize the impact that the organization makes for the writers. Yeah. Until I meet them face to face like this, and then they come up to me and they say things like that, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing something right. But usually I'm so busy that it's hard for me to sit down and absorb. You know, it's been since 2015 how much work we've done and how much, you know, we've pushed our writers. So, which I'm very proud of, not because of me, but because of my team as well, who dedicates their time to, you know, help me amplify these stories that I think are so necessary for us to preserve. You know, I wish that I had sat down and had conversations with my grandmother, you know, and it's not, you know, I hope my sons, I hope my son's kids do that with me. If not, I'm going to sit them down and say, this is what your grandmother did. Because I think those conversations are so important, right? Like I've sat down and had conversations with my mom, because sometimes how do we say this? We don't humanize these people, right? Like, I'm pretty sure growing up, we're like, oh, you know, my mom and dad, yeah, they're doing this. But then when you know what their sacrifices were and what their challenges were and, you know, how they got by with what little they had, what little resource, with no English, you know, coming to this country, immigrating to a country that you don't know, you know, then it's when it dawns on you that you're like, oh, crap. Like, you know, they did a lot for us. Right? And the only way for us to find out is to sit down and talk to them and hope that they speak back to us, because a lot of our elders don't like to recount those stories.
But we have to ask questions.
Yeah. I believe so. Yes, I agree. So for Eddie, I think you mentioned this, but I was going to ask you what challenges did you have in... You mentioned challenges that you had in getting it published, traditionally published, right? But let's talk about challenges you face in preserving the authenticity of these proverbs while making them accessible to modern day Dominicans.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember sitting in Scherezade's, you know, living room, and we were going through the refranes. No, this is too obscure. This is too kind of bland. We're trying to get the right kind of, just the right sense of the refrán. And also, it's very kind of multidisciplinary, because how does it relate with the colors of the page and what we wanted to convey with the reader? So it was challenging in that part, because I'm a historian. So we are trained to, traditionally, go to an archive, look at primary sources, write them down, maybe do some ethnographic research, you interview people, and then you write about, say, the only Dominican Tuskegee airman during World War II. And how do you bring that life, you know? But
you did that in a sense with your grandmother.
Yeah, but the thing is, for me, remember, don't ever ask a historian for the time. Right? Because it's gonna te va la lata, right? He's gonna keep going and going. So for me, first of all, remember the initial thing with Leah was like, it has to, usually children's books are between 500 or 800
words.
Or 800 words. And I was like, that can't be, right? And so it's hard for me to, because
Yeah, I don't see you with a children's book.
We have to write, yeah. The other thing is, how do you tell the story, with a limited amount of words,
And then what we did also, all the discussions we had, it was like, some of the books that, one of them was like Maurice Sendak. I don't know if you know Maurice Sendak. See,
where the wild things are.
Exactly, and I adore, that's not the one I like actually. I like the one that is chicken soup. Remember that we talked about it? And I said,
January, February.
I love that. And it was like short, but over there, on target, and poetry. I thought it had the combination of how beautiful words are and how words provoke images, and then we needed to do that, and that's what we tried to do.
And the other thing is that this book didn't know what it wanted to be, right? Is this a children's book? Right? Because there's no kind of narrative, and we all, whoever has told stories to kids, buenas noches, Luna, buenas noches, right? Like there's a story. Here, it's a kind of hybrid, right? And we were okay with that. And by the way, our publisher was okay with that too, right? Because the important thing, right, on so many levels, the art becomes primary source, right? The text is also a preservation. Like the original script or text is many pages. In my first original version, I don't know if you remember, I talked about how my grandmother, who was born in either 1903 or 1905, because we know that in rural areas, there's one date for being born and the other when you're registered, right? So I had lines when my grandmother in the 19-teens was courted by American soldiers who were part of the occupying force. The United States invaded from 1916 to 1924. Imagine that. La están piropeando esta muchacha. In the 19-teens, the same soldiers who, not unlike Abu Ghraib years later in Iraq, were accused of torture of, Dominicans and also Haitians on the other side, right? So all of this has to be sacrificed for the story. Now, we can, maybe it's the second volume, maybe it can resurrect into another type of book, like the memoir behind the Refranes making. But it's a challenge to leave stuff out.
Yeah, but also one thing, that goes with the idea of to be hybrid, we didn't really want to. Artists, what we do is to play the rules. This is what our thing is about, But it's a different way of archiving. For example, in the case of my work, I always felt that saints, they just don't belong to our community, belong to all of us. So then, all my figures are brown. But my figures are brown, in my paintings, everything, always, is because the mixing of all the colors in a palette, the outcome is brown. So then when I have brown, nobody's left behind. So it's this idea of coming from the Caribbean, a place that is, a blending of everybody, but also the idea that this book doesn't belong to only us. It has to go beyond, and it shouldn't have a nationality. What we felt, though, the only thing that we felt very strong about is that we wanted to work with you. We wanted to make sure it felt like it belonged to the history of us in New York. So that's like complex.
Wow. All these things coming out today.
It's like therapy.
So this question is for Scherezade. What's your favorite refrán to illustrate?
The one that is like every head is different. Is it what? What's the one? Cada vez que eso es un mundo, ay Dios mío. Cada cabeza es un mundo. That's my favorite.
¿Y qué significa ese refrán para ti?
Because it feels like it celebrates individuality, but because I work so much with the idea of collective, but yet I do love the uniqueness of each one of us. So I also feel like another one that I love, that it continues with that, is the one that...
that is my favorite illustration.
That's my favorite.
That's the one I want to print.
And the other one that it says like, hablando se entiende la gente. That actually, I think it's at the end. Well, anyway, hablando se entiende la gente. And I love that one because it's so relevant in our times. Like if we sit down, you can understand the point of view of somebody else.
Oh, this one.
Yes, talking. When we are, like in jueces, in el recreo, and we have this amiguita that maybe we don't like when we are in the classroom, but then all of a sudden in the recreo, we get a chance to see her and to share with her apart from the collective, and all of a sudden become your best friend.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Sentando, nosotros hablando se enciende la gente. I love that.
It's if you think about it, the Refranes, right? They're universal, right? Julia Alvarez wrote the prologue, and she mentions Aesop, right? So Refranes are not Dominican, but it's really, right? I'm just wowed by the fact that the way my grandmother began this relationship with Refranes was that she was raised by her aunt. And in those days, her mother, for many reasons, she couldn't raise her, so she went with her aunt, with su tía, who just happened to have a library. So imagine, she's born in 1903, 1905, and so it might be 1915, 1912, 1914, right? And she's in this library reading, taking out books, not unlike these shelves, at a time when the majority of Dominicans were illiterate and lived in the countryside, right? And my mother tells me when she was growing up in the 50s and 60s how my abuela, because she had read all of these books, right? And then what happens when she's 18, right? She goes and gets married and goes to the campo, right? She had two choices because she had another tia who lived in Boston and wanted her to go to Boston, but she said, I'm not going to go to Boston. And so, but because of those years of reading, she goes to this campo and she knows how to read and write, and so she becomes the person who everybody goes, Anadelia Diaz, who can look at the contract, who can read. So it's just, and I write about this, I say, all of this started with this young girl in a library in the Caribbean, in a library with this insatiable love for books. Right? That for me, I just can't get, and when I read to my kids, right, the power of education, how it can sustain you, right? That's what I think these refranes represent.
So my next question is, how do you envision the young generation, like your children, right, to receiving this book?
Well, I got my two kids here, Lelola and Caribe, and they can tell you, no lie, that I still say the refranes almost every day, right? Especially for
do they appreciate it?
Yeah.
Or do they say, God, Dad, you're so annoying?
Oh yeah, they roll their eyes. Oh, of course.
That's what my team says.
But I tell them, what's the go-to refrán? Okay, yo siempre digo. Right. There's always a hair in the stew, and it's so universal. Years ago, I used to teach with a colleague of mine, and she is English professor, right? She's Jewish.
Can you use the mic?
Oh, sorry. She's Jewish and she knew a little Yiddish. And when I say there's always a hair in the stew, and she goes, "Oh my God, can that be?" Because it has can that be? And I said because it has an old world wisdom, right? And what does that mean? It's like you need to be prepared. There will always be an issue. You can't be perfectionist. So these refranes are amazing because they capture, they're portable, these nuggets of wisdom that are about the golden rule. It's like, I want to go to a party tomorrow night. Can I go to a party tomorrow night? And what do I say? Right? Dime con quien tú andas y te diré quién tú eres. Tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are. And I also see refranes as these hidden trust funds, or trust funds in plain sight. We all have them, but we don't think they're of value because they're so banal, right? They're quotidiano. They're always in front of us, but they're incredibly powerful. And so I think with this book, Scherezade and I, since 3 or 4 years ago, what we wanted is to use this as an excuse to really get people to start talking to each other and writing things down. So basically, think about this as the Refranes book as a story core, right? Where NPR, people get together, give me 3 minutes and tell me about the war. Or another way to think about it.
That's not for you though, right?
That's not for me.
Do 3 minutes.
No, not for me. 3 minutes. 3 cube. But it's like Anthony Bourdain, right? Anthony Bourdain used food as a pretext to get to know other cultures.
Yes.
We want this book to start a conversation and to what usually intimate knowledge is exchanged usually around the kitchen table. You know, cuéntame, ¿qué pasó? What happened? And you write it down, because when they're no longer here, guess how much that interview is going to be? There's no price. It's invaluable. And I tell my students all the time, sit down. And my students are from all over the world. And I actually have a student, amazing student, Gabriel, who was my student here, and he can tell you, right? I said,
You're the only one who came out of all his students?
yes.
Wow.
They're still doing my homework.
¿Qué pasó ahí? So you're not doing homework?
Oh, I graduated.
Oh.
yeah.
Okay. So, Eddie, is there a personal story that you could share with us about one of the refranes?
Oh, there are many.
Choose one.
I mean, I just mentioned the one that I told my kids, because I think my Abuelita and my mother too. It's about honor, right? It's like.
Use the mic, please.
Oh, sorry. It's about honor, right?
Sorry, I'm editing this video.
Okay, sorry. It's about honor. It's about integrity, right? My mother, Doña, ¿dónde está? Levante la mano. There she goes. You know, my mother is my mother.
Oh, she's so cute.
And-
¿Por qué ella no se sentó aquí adelante? En el VIP.
Porque no le gusta la atención. You know, she's always, cibaeña. She's always.
Ya tú le pusiste la atención.
Yeah, but she always tells me, in terms of the idea of honor, it's like you're always representing yourself and your people, right? I always tell my kids when I drop you off, it's like honor yourself, honor us, and do good today, right? And my mother has this thing. I don't know if it's a saying. She says, "Hey, que no te pisen cola." Oh, mira ahí, right? It's like don't let anyone step on your tail, which means, right? The tail becomes this kind of the metaphor for your reputation. So the thinking is the longer your tail, that means that you have people can then have more excuse to step on.
Right.
Okay, you know, the longer the tail, the more bad your reputation you might have. What you want is to have a short enough tail so that nobody can be able to say, I saw Lelai coming out of the store. Was she vaping? You know, like whatever it is. Right?
Ay, la pobre.
Or Caribe. You know, they're amazing kids. I love my kids, but they're teenagers. Oh my God, I love them. Pero I mean, it's about really. You come from scarcity, from a developing country, from the campo, and the sense that, you know, this woman had to raise 8 kids.
Yeah.
My mother was the youngest, in a place where hurricanes, kind of earthquakes, droughts, dictatorship,
Yes.
smallpox, believe it or not, in the Dominican Republic in the 60s was a thing. And she was the anchor, right? I think that's what the Refranes is. And I'm really overwhelmed to be talking about how my abuela, my tias, Scherezade, you know, women literally made this possible. And in the month of March.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm just seeing that correlation today. I'm like, wait a minute. It's Women's History Month. We're celebrating these women in this book.
So it's good we postponed.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, coincidente. What about you, Scherezade? Do you have a personal story attached to one of the refranes?
I want to tell you something. Yes, I do, but at the same time, I am thinking about the way that I can digest all this information. Like, I come also from, like, such a matriarch, you know, powerhouse. And it was also important to kind of share, you know. And I remember that my grandmother used, so my mother too, what we used to do, it was to kind of like, we have refranes, or we have like stories, and we have to add them out. We have to make the whole theater, because it was a way to comprehend better. It was beyond just the words, but also how we communicate with our bodies. You know, and I love that. And I love that. So to me, this is an excuse for us to go beyond the literal, like just like it's that metaphor. I find that like one refrain, you know, it can really provoke so many conversations. You know, so it's kind of a book that is beyond just one page. So in that sense, I would say that it combines my memories from when I had a very good childhood. You know, and every time I think about it, I just have to smile all the time. That's why I find that it's important to be joyful. But also because it's serious. To be serious, there was no bad in my house. And I like that this kind of thing can be kind of looking like innocent, but it's not. And I love that. I love that duality.
Thank you. So, what message do you want readers of all ages to take away with this book? With reading this book? And how far do you want this book to go? Right? Where do you envision this book going?
I hope that everyone leaves today and starts thinking about their own histories and trust funds and write them down. I'm a historian, so I'm kind of
How many of you have trust funds?
Yeah. Right, we do. Right, what type of trust fund, right?
What type of trust fund?
This is my trust fund, right? This is what I was thinking when I was
Our legacy.
writing down when my tias were alive, right? You hear like, oh, the trust fund, I left money in the bank, I left land and all that. But there was a moment where I was like, this is my trust fund, right? Like, but it doesn't, in a capitalist society, it doesn't get valued or calculated, right? It's not given worth that.
We're about to put it on eBay, so
right.
Well,
so that proves, right? Like Talib Kweli, rapper, he used to say we have to monetize our cultural relevancy. That, you know, we live in a capitalist society, but there is, and you know, we're not going to be making, you know, Harry Potter, you know, cheddar, as they say, but to live a life where you're able to honor those who came before you, that's incredibly powerful. That's what I want people to walk away with, but also in terms of next steps, you know, yeah, I've collected so far over 300 refranes. Like, yes, I want to continue, and what's also exciting is what type of iterations will this project take, right? How do you convey refranes in ways that perhaps go beyond the traditional book that we all know?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was just thinking that one thing that I really like about saying yes to so many things, because I find projects, I love them. I love projects. But it's the thing is that, you know, it's when you work in collaboration, you know, it's a win-win situation. You know, because you know, if you are all the time with visual artists, like in my case, it's like a yes thing. We kind of know each other. Like, you see that, yeah. But then when you are with a scholar, it's like, it's kind of a challenge, because the way that you see things sometimes is very different. But that enriched me, you know, the same way that, you know, Mike, sometimes you are like, oh my God, it's exactly what I was thinking. And that kind of thing is that I love. You know, that the fact that a book, anything takes a village. You know, and that I would like also to be part of the conversation. How everything comes from, okay, how the present is completely informed by our past. So that is completely ancestral memory, but it really defines our present. But also how things are done, created, you know, are because some people get together. It's not only one mind. It's like a lot of people together. And then the success of a book like this is also how we are able to reach our audience.
And
so it's like a, you know, it's a long thing.
And it's this took like almost 3 or 4 years, and it's deceptively simple.
Not with me though.
Right.
The 4 years with them.
Right, yeah, with us, yes. Yeah, thank you. But what you were talking about, what I think also, I'm a Gen Xer.
Are you?
I am, legit. I'm 54, legit, 69, baby. Right? And all the science says, which I think really, like, all the science now says, like blue zones, etc., how to live a long life and healthy. And according to the research, right, the Surgeon General, right, of the United States says the thing that Americans should be worried about among, disease, etc., is alienation, right? And so the science says that you think it's diet, you think it's exercise, but that the number one thing in terms of indicator to live a long, healthy life is social ties.
Un coro.
Relationships. Un coro heavy, un coro bien. A community.
Yeah.
And so,
I don't think we're gonna die from that.
No, but you have to be intentional, because the thing is, we come from training and professions, like a historian, it's a lonely job. Like if you read one of my favorite authors, Robert Caro, who wrote The Power Broker and LBJ, it takes him years, but it's a lonely thing. You have to stay by yourself. And so one of the great things about this project is that it allowed me to collaborate, to be a community. And so what I yearn, and I'm excited about as I get older, is the chance to continue to collaborate in very interdisciplinary ways. So not just with a visual artist or a painter, but perhaps with a sculptor or a dancer or a composer, right? The idea of mixing things and and really maximizing serendipity is where the research is, and I think that has been one of the most fulfilling things. It's not work.
I agree.
It's a joy to do things that are not kind of tied to any kind of financial concerns solely.
And I have one thing to add. You see the illustrations? They're really paintings. One thing that I couldn't be part of this greed of illustration had to be something small and you had to fit the book. I decided, you know what? I like big things. I mean, that's small for me. Everybody that knows me, Chicky knows me very well too. It's like big paintings, And I thought that it was important to go a little bigger and to make sure they were paintings. So it had all the physicality of drawing and painting. So it kind of were able to carry the energy of the wisdom of the Refranes. So, there was all these decisions that sometimes we take for granted because we're so close to the project. But now that I think about it, it's important to talk about.
Nice, thank you guys. So, what are the projects you have? Scherezade, yo estoy segura que tú tienes una lista. And Eddie, forget it. Like, I lost track.
No, we have a little, okay, well, I have...
What should we have in our calendar the next few months with you guys?
Well, we have something that is coming up with the book in Washington, D.C. We also have something with the book in Madrid, Spain. And I have a bunch of shows coming up.
So the Dominican Book Fair is in November.
Well,
Yeah.
It's dedicated to New York.
Okay. We'll talk to our publisher.
I'm letting you know now. Para que lo apunte. Okay, so guys, we want to open up for questions. Anyone has questions for Eddie or Scherezade? Alguien tiene una pregunta. Come on now. Up there. Hi. Ven, párate. Párate y vocea.
I wanted to ask if grief played any part in your creation process. Grief, if it played any part in your
Grief. Oh, sorry.
In your creation process.
You know what? In a way, yes. In a way, yes, because I always see to make sure I always communicate joy is because there is always this anti-suffering. I always kind of have this lens of optimism, as a resistance to the idea of suffering. Like I will take over, I will get over. I will heal his story. That's how I see. In fact, that's how my work is about. You know. So, very good question.
Yeah, of course, the starting point was when my abuela died. But I don't know if all of you have thoughts like this, but it made me kind of transport myself. And I have these kind of images sometimes of, like being a Time Lord, Doctor Who, where he goes into this kind of red, British telephone booth, and he travels the universe. And these refranes talking about grief, because we all have a lot of trauma, right? And diaspora is traumatic too. But just thinking about sometimes going back and finding them in this campo, right? And like my mother used to tell me, sometimes it was so bad that, 3 brothers or sisters used to share one egg. And the grief is like this inability, knowing that history, but the inability to be able to go back and maybe protect them and help them. These are some of the things, I don't know if it makes sense, but I get this sometimes when I became a historian, when I went to the FDR library, presidential library, and I'm looking at the letters written from FDR to Trujillo and back, like in their handwriting or typewritten, and I'm there. And my thought is, it's somewhat, not maybe grief, but sadness in a way, right? To know that I am in this bastion of blue blood, waspish culture, which is Hyde Park, where FDR lived. You can see the tour of his wheelchair, where he and Eleanor are buried, parents of the New Deal. And I'm going through these documents, like a fly in a wall. But, reading letters that were written at a time when my illiterate relatives were eking out an existence in the campo. And it's just this kind of like, time travel. So maybe not grief, but it's this kind of experience of dislocation with the space-time continuum, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Anyone else? No one else has a question? Don't be shy. There you go.
I want to hear more about this collaboration. In other words, they always say between lyricists and musicians when they're writing what came first, etc. And I know it started with Eddie, with the sayings from your grandmother, but how did it work back and forth? From these beautiful paintings, did you then show it to Eddie, and then you went back and forth, and this one goes with this one, what do you think? Just more about that, because you really talked about the collaboration and how important it was to you.
Well, we do share this love for books. And both our grandmothers, both of them, love books, and that was so important to me, and it's something I adore. And this idea of like storytelling. Storytelling was something that was super important. To this day, is something that is. I do that with my kids. I do the whole drama. Like I cannot be like I cannot read like this happened today. I can say this happened today. Like I have to be kind of dramatic, and I love for that. And I think we both have this very very loving, experiences with our grandmothers. And with storytelling. So I think that was a very important common denominator, and then from there, we agreed that he will have all the bad habits of the scholars, and I will have all the bad habits, and I don't care, of being a painter.
But Eddie is a dramatist.
He loved that too. But I love that.
So they have a lot in common.
No, we do have that. So, but we agree, like, in being, like, dramatic, And then my drama, in this case, was joy. and to make sure I brought joy, because there was so much love in his story and also in what I remember from my experience with storytelling from my childhood. So I think that was very important. Don't you think?
Yes, and I mean, she was very generous. She let me see the paintings, and I am, you know, I'm not gonna say that's too many strokes. You should change. You shouldn't. I'm like, who am I to say? I don't know. But the question is, I like it because Jessica, right? It's what does the book want to be? It's not. Sometimes the paintings are not literal in terms of, sometimes it is. There's a bread, el pan, like a baby is born with a loaf of bread under, right? Which, have many of you heard that? El niño nace con un pan debajo del sobaco. Right? What does that mean?
So the baby comes, okay, don't worry, you're gonna get something and you're gonna solve it. That's the idea. The baby's gonna come with good news.
And by the way, here's the counterpart to that. Years later, I'm hearing this. Mi mamá, no te preocupes, que el niño nace con un pan debajo del sobaco. It's like, keep it moving, right? And then years later, I'm in Michigan, and I'm doing my PhD, and one of my friends, she's Ethiopian. They speak Amharic and all that. And we start talking, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to now, I took my class, and now I have to take my comps, to then, it's like, oh my God, 5 years. And she goes, don't worry, the children will grow. What? That's an Ethiopian saying. Don't worry, the children will grow. It's not that dissimilar from the baby is born, right? So the great thing about, and this is what I love about, being Dominican, is that, I'm an American, I live in New York, even though this is the Republic of the United States, New York City. But the Dominican side, like Refranes, allowed me, I don't know if you guys think about this, allowed me this type of, I see my kids, this kind of Duolingo translator to the world, right? That my American side couldn't, but the Dominican side, because, we ride 5 to a moped, or we fill up a camioneta with plátanos and it's almost tipping over. Like that sensibility of developing, of striving, helped me communicate with Ethiopians, with Kenyans, with Bosnians, right? So I was like, oh my God, so everybody has these refranes. And it's very ecumenical and inclusive. Most cultures around the world, anthropologists will tell you, have a tradition of storytelling. So refranes is a way to both celebrate the relative, but also espouse the universal.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, we're gonna end it there tonight. Who has the book? I'm gonna make sure you open. Oh, look at that. Thank you. That's so wonderful. I heard we ran out. But if you need to buy more copies, I have a QR code that takes you directly to a checkout page. Okay? And yes, so we're gonna set up a table for they can sit
We'll
here.
set up a table here.
Yeah, we'll set up a table here and you can all get online in an orderly fashion, por favor. No, bueno, iba a decir no pictures, pero olvídense. Tómense todas las fotos ustedes quieran.
And thank you very much for coming.
But thank you for coming. Please enjoy this book. Share it with your students. Share it with your local libraries. Share it with your professors. With your kids. Travel with it.
And get that trust fund. Write stories down.
And harass Scherezade so she could do prints. Okay?
You don't have to harass me, I want that.
Okay, because I want prints. I want a print in my apartment. I collect Dominican artwork, and I need one of those. Quizás me llevo uno de esos cuadros de ahí ya. But everyone just make a line over here, and we could get your book signed.
Thank you very much.
darle a esto, espérate. Porque yo conozco.
That could be one of the Oh, great. Undermining you. Sorry, I was.